This is The High Road with author and registered psychotherapist, Dr. Marlene Bizub. Dr. Marlene speaks to the heart of people who need to be lifted up and get out of the muck and mire that often accompanies major life changes, such as divorce or separation. Dr. Marlene will aspire to help parents of divorce to love their children more than they hate their ex, and to learn to take the high road. So please welcome the host of The High Road, Dr. Marlene.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Hi, George. How are you?
Good morning, Dr. Marlene. Always great to be with you, at least morning in our time zone.
Yes. And 10 o'clock at that. This is like too early for me. No, I'm kidding. So we have been talking the last couple of weeks about the rules of co-parenting, and we took a detour to cover the best interest of the child statute, which I think most states have something similar, akin to the Colorado best interest of the child statute. But they have something similar, correct?
Yeah, there's going to be something similar to our statute. There's going to be some criteria that are laid out to decide custody or parental rights and parenting time. And that's going to be pretty much in all 50 states.
Well, and that's what I thought and what I've always understood about this work. And so we did take a couple of weeks and covered that. And I hope people found that helpful, useful. If you don't know what a judge is looking at, then how do you know how to present your case in court, And the attorneys know that, but the parents don't always know, And so I think it's important that attorneys and parents alike, parents need to know so they don't say something they shouldn't say, not knowing it's contrary to the statute or the standard or whatever you want to call it.
Well, as recently as last week, I was contacted by an old friend whose adult son, is having problems with telephone contact with the children. And I almost can't say enough about telephone protocol for the
Well,
parent.
we will start there.
Okay.
No, go ahead, but we'll start there. I'm going to turn to
Well,
page 2.
the parent and child protocol, what's appropriate, what isn't, and I guess there are some age factors there to be considered. But in this case, there are 12 or 13-year-olds, and I don't think they need the one parent hovering over them while they're talking on the phone with the absentee parent. And the absentee parent is going to be permanently absentee. The dad is disabled and lives across the country. Both parties moved out of the state of Colorado. And of course, the best thing I could do for this friend of mine was refer him to counsel in the state that has jurisdiction and the children. And I told him, I said, it's not a complicated matter. The court can lay down a protocol for phone contact. We have FaceTime, we have Zoom, we have all these technologies. Let's utilize them to preserve relationships.
Yes, absolutely. And especially in long distance situations. I know parents who are local still like to talk to their kids, every couple of days. Some parents want to talk to their kids every day. And I can tell you that that's overkill for the kid. No offense to the parent, but they're with the other parent. And often when you were together, one or the other of you was working late, away on a trip, maybe a work trip or personal trip for that matter, family matters, whatever. And you didn't talk to your child necessarily every single day. Or maybe by the time you got home, they were in bed, or they're home, but they've got friends over, or they're doing homework or whatever. And so every day for a phone call is overkill. But back to um, long distance parenting is not what it used to be. Because back in the day when I was growing up, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have FaceTime, we certainly didn't have Zoom or any of that. And now, anywhere you are, you can pick up your phone and FaceTime the other parent. And that video personalizes the contact. I remember when my son was growing up, and he's now 36. And when he was growing up, he and his dad had those webcams. You know, computers used to not come with cameras, and they bought the webcam attachments and they would video chat. And my son just thought that was the coolest thing, you know. And so, but there are rules around phone calls. And I'm glad you brought that up because that is a great place to start. First of all, the item I use says, because you were talking about the mother not hovering when it's a 13-year-old child. I agree. I cannot emphasize that enough. And the item that I use, because I reuse the same items in parenting plans, once you get that wording down, you might as well stick with it. And it says, children staying at one house and communicating with the other parent should have an expectation of privacy. And that's exactly what that means is, well, it goes on to say, in particular, telephone calls should not be listened in on with or without the child having knowledge that it is occurring. So even if the parent is outside the child's room, you know, with their ear to the door listening, that doesn't make it okay. In fact, that is not okay. So, yes, there needs to be privacy first and foremost.
I think that that's true, and the degree of control that's being exercised by one parent, I think, arguably rises to the level of alienation.
Hmm. Yes. Yes. When you want to control everything your child says to the other parent or everything that parent says to them, you know, you just don't need to hear all of that and be a part of all of that. You don't want them listening in on you when you're talking with the child. And so, you know, why would the parent think it's okay to listen in on the other parent? And if a parent really has concerns about what's being said, there's other ways to address that. You know, you can utilize a parenting coordinator or someone like that to help look into those kind of things. But the child really should have privacy. And
Well,
I'm
I
going to
think
elaborate. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I think particularly at that age, there comes a time
Yes.
when it's not there's no safety issue or anything like that involved, and the privacy is paramount.
Mhm.
Um, and but I mean, there doesn't need, as you've said, there doesn't need to be a call every day. But certainly, where in as in this case that I'm thinking of, where one parent is really going to be virtually estranged from the children unless some sort of contact protocol is set up.
Mhm.
Uh, that's very serious, and it's not complicated. I said it's not difficult to set up, but it certainly needs to be in place. There needs to be some boundaries that the one parent understands and respects. That can easily be put into a court order that adopts the language that you've shared with us today. So I just can't say enough about the need for phone protocols and parenting plans.
Right. Well, and to that point, we often need to put in, and it's sad that we need to, but sometimes we do, how often the phone call is going to occur, or even what days, like Wednesday and Sunday, the child's going to talk to the other parent on the phone. Now, to that point, that does not mean that the children can't call any other time because I believe they should be allowed to call anytime they want, with a few exceptions. One is when you're busy with the other family, if it's dinner time, if it's time to do your homework, and you're just calling the other parent to stall, or the other parent is calling when they know it's dinner time because they just want to disrupt your parenting time. I mean, there's things like that. And then the other one that is a Marlene rule for people who work with me, that is, I don't let kids call the other parent when they're in trouble with the parent they are with. If you're in trouble with mom and you want to call dad to talk about how bad mom is and how horrible she's treating you and all of that, no, we're not going to play that game. We're not going to pit one parent against the other. And so I do impose that rule. And that's rarely put into a court order. I just make that a rule that I impose on the families I work with. But I think it's important because kids will play one parent against the other.
Sneaky little devils, aren't they?
They are. They are. But they'll call, and next thing you know, the story is blown way out of proportion. They exaggerate, they embellish, they say things the parent didn't say, but they say they said them, stuff like that. I've seen all of this. I'm not making this stuff up. And also to elaborate on the privacy issue. Because, like you said, when they get to be 12, 13, they don't need somebody hovering. But even when they're 4 or 3, and a parent says, well, I have to be there, I have to hold the phone. No, you don't. Teach your child to let the phone sit there on a stand, tell them not to touch it, turn on FaceTime, call the other parent, and walk out. There is no reason that kids, even as young as 3 and 4, cannot talk with privacy. And so I don't let parents use that excuse either, that they're too young to handle the phone.
Well, and really these precautions of including these protocols in a parenting plan, uh, they really do typically avoid a lot of conflict and irritation on the part of one or both parents. And I think it's invaluable to have that kind of language in a parenting plan.
Yes, yes. It's often imperative, not just prudent or a good idea or wise, but imperative. Because you do have parents that, left to them, they're never going to have the kids call the other parent. It's not
No.
going to happen. And those are the ones where we say, Wednesday and Sunday, or Monday, Wednesday and Friday, or whatever days you want to choose, the parent will have a call. And the older the children are, the less frequently they need to talk. But there's a big but there. Those are the age kids, when they get to be older, that will have more times they want to call the other parent because something has happened. They've done well on a test. They gave a speech at school. They scored a goal in their soccer game, whatever it may be. And they want to call the other parent. And so they'll do that more when they're a little older, but that's also a time that they probably don't need to talk 2 or 3 times a week. One is probably sufficient.
Yeah, I think that's true. And they may get to an age where they find an obligation to call the other parent as a burden. They'd rather
Right.
talk with their friends than the parent.
That's right. And that's something I want to emphasize. And I feel this way, and I know you share this feeling. But these phone calls really meet the needs of the parents much more than the kids. The kids are happy doing whatever they're doing, or if they're unhappy about something because they're in trouble or whatever, again, that's not something they need to call the other parent about. But they are usually content either hanging out with their friends, talking to their friends on the phone, playing video games, playing interactive video games with their friends, things like that. They're happy to be doing what they're doing. And they really do find it an interruption, an annoyance, a burden, whatever you want to call it, to have to stop doing what they're doing and go get on the phone with the other parent.
Yeah, I think that's true. And of course, the older they get, I think the less they feel a need for that parental contact and interaction. Um, they age out of it. I mean,
Yeah.
we tend to swing back. I think as we go into adulthood, hopefully we swing back to closeness to our parents,
Mhm.
uh, both of them if possible. But certainly it's something to be considered, and the friction that results from these phone intrusions, if you will,
Mhm.
it's just it's not worth it, and it's relatively easily avoided.
Yes. Yes. Well, and also you mentioned earlier length of time on the phone. So I would like to speak to this too, because you have parents who get on the phone and they want to just keep the kid on the phone. They want to linger, if you will, and just keep talking to them. And if the kid is really enjoying talking and they have something they want to share, that's one thing. But if the parent is just keeping them just asking question after question after question to keep them on the phone, all that's going to do is annoy the child. The parent thinks, no, it really is. The parent thinks I'm annoying the other parent, and you probably are. But more importantly, you're annoying your own child because they don't want to hang on the phone. So we do have a rule of thumb, and that is roughly, this is not hard and fast, roughly 1 minute per year of age of the child. That's
Mhm.
about how long they can withstand being on the phone. So if it's a 5-year old, 5 minutes. If it's a 10-year old, 10 minutes. But roughly, that's how long they can reasonably talk. So, do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I do, and I think parents need to be sensitive, just and not get their feelings hurt.
Hmm.
Uh, just as when kids reach an age where they would rather hang around with their friends than hang around with their parents, and
Yes.
so there's we want to avoid them getting their nose out of joint, if you will, and that's a good way to do it.
Yes. And I have seen orders written, and obviously I wasn't on the case and didn't have input, that said phone calls will be no less than 15 minutes. And the kids are 3 and 5. You're
Yeah.
not going to get a 3 and a 5-year-old to hang on the phone for 15 minutes. But I've seen that in orders that they will be no less than 15. And I'm like, I would love to hear how that goes because I know that's not going well. And I know they are not achieving that. Or if they are, the kid is probably like laying over and, not engaged because they just can't, a 3 or a 5-year-old can't withstand 15 minutes in front of a phone.
No, no, that's true. I can barely do that myself.
I know. That is so true. But this is stuff that parents just don't know. And this goes back to parents not knowing what they don't know. They don't know what they don't know, as they say. And that is really true. I can't emphasize that enough. Get a professional involved, even if it's for an hour or two. Pay for an hour or two of someone's time, or get a parenting coordinator that can walk you through all of this because we're not going to think of everything in an hour or two.
No, and we can't think of everything in an unlimited amount of time. There's an unlimited amount of variables that we face in life, but these recurrent ones that we're aware of, that we can plan for, and it's certainly good to do so.
Yes, yes. And I will speak more to that when we come back. It's time to take a quick break, but I have thoughts about that. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Before we went to break, we were talking about having someone involved in your case, like a parenting coordinator, to walk you through the order. And we were talking about how an hour or two, because I said at least pay for an hour or two of a professional's time. And then I quickly said an hour or two is probably not going to be enough, and you heartily agreed. But this is why the PCDM appointment in Colorado, anyway, and I think in most states, is a 2-year appointment. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, you can ask for a parenting coordinator or a parenting coordinator / decision maker to be appointed on your case. And the appointment is typically a 2-year appointment. And I wanted to talk about this because, George, I was at the AFCC, which is the Association of Family and Conciliation Courts. And I'll give them a plug because they are a great organization. But I was at the conference a couple of years ago when we had a breakout session on how long should a PC appointment be? And by and large, people felt like 4 or 5 years was more appropriate. And if you don't need us, you don't pay for us. I mean, that's the way I work. Like, if you don't need me, I'm here. Call me if you need me. If you don't, it's not costing you anything. But if you run into a snag, then I'm here. And it's a lot cheaper, faster, especially faster, and all of that than going back to court. Less stressful, there's a lot of benefits. And like I said, if you don't need it, you're not paying for anything because I only bill for my time. I don't charge people to have me sitting here waiting for them to have a problem. If they have a problem, then the clock starts, but yeah.
I think most mental health professionals in a situation like I'm dealing with or referring to with a friend of mine, a mental health professional could come in, evaluate the situation, and make recommendations for how to have boundaries and phone protocols in place. That would be adopted as a court order. and we're done, basically.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And that's what people don't realize is it's so easy. And a lot of parents don't want to give the PC that decision-making authority. And I explain to them, I only make a decision when you can't agree. But do you want to come to me and I'll figure it out fairly quickly and I'll make a decision? And as you said, that becomes an order, or do you wanna wait 3 or 4 or 5 or more months to get into court and then have to try to explain it all to the judge? And, they aren't, no offense to judges, but they aren't family experts, and they don't know other than what we tell them what's best for families. But it's just so quick and easy to have a parenting coordinator with decision-making authority to resolve that issue pretty quickly, usually within a week, if not less.
Well, and I think people need to understand that I think a mental health professional's orientation is for problem solving and
Mhm.
resolution.
Yep.
Our orientation is win by intimidation, win by embarrassing the other party on the witness
Mhm.
stand. Uh, Things, the dynamic is not one that is productive for an amicable parenting, co-parenting relationship. It hardens positions, litigation. It makes people feel more justified in their own position. It makes them more recalcitrant, hesitant, unwilling to compromise,
Mhm.
and we feed into that. I mean, that's part of what we're trained to do. So if they have the opportunity to involve a mental health professional and understand that that dynamic is conciliatory,
Mhm.
uh, that I think that's really helpful and important.
Yes, yes, I think it is too. And I think what people like about their attorney is they know they're going to take their side. And they like that. They like having someone in their corner. But as you said, by nature of what you do, it's going to be adversarial. You're going to fight. And it's not going to be, let's reach a compromise, because that's just not your role.
No, and fighting tends to breed more fighting, quite
Yeah.
frankly.
Yes. Yes, it does. Yeah, people never walk out of the courtroom feeling like things are better. Somebody's mad, somebody's happy. Sometimes both parents are mad. How many times have
Yeah,
we seen that?
there's
Yeah,
certainly a win-lose there's a
yes.
win-lose dynamic in the courtroom that is not there when you're working with a mental health professional. I think a mental health professional is more oriented toward looking for win-win solutions.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, I would agree. And, like I started to say, how many times have we walked out of a courtroom and both parties are unhappy because neither one got really what they wanted?
Well, and I've heard judges, many judges over the years say if both parties are mad or unhappy, then I feel like I made a fair ruling. And
Yes, I did
that's
have it, yes.
that's kind of a cynical outlook, but maybe that's self-protection for the judge. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Well, it's true. It's true. Because when one party is happy, then, things were probably more slanted toward their side, if you will. And what we try to do is reach a compromise. If you can't compromise, you're going to have trouble. I talk about this when I teach the level 2 co-parenting class. That if you can't compromise in this, you don't have to collaborate, but you have to compromise. Because if you don't, you're going to find yourself on the losing end of things a lot, because that other parent is not going to give back to you if you don't compromise with them.
No, and I tell people nobody gives a standing ovation to a compromise. We
No.
understand that.
Yeah.
We
Right.
understand. But the alternative is ongoing litigation.
Yes.
And that tends to just breed more litigation, quite frankly.
Yeah. No, it does. It does, and I can't tell you how many times, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir on this. You have probably experienced this many, many more times than I have. Walk out of a courtroom and the client says, "How soon can we file, a motion to go back?" And it might be 2 years because we have a 2-year rule here in Colorado, but that you can't take things back for 2 years. But which you could probably explain better than I can. That's a very loose way of describing it. But still, you have parents who that's their first thought is how quickly can I relitigate this? And that's what they're looking to do is just relitigate.
Either that or take it up on appeal. And I have to explain, simply because you disagree with the ruling does not constitute grounds for an appeal.
Right, right. I had to learn that when I started doing this kind of work because I didn't know that. When it's appealed, the issue is not was it a right or wrong decision? It's did they follow all the statutes and protocols and all of that, correct?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
very much so. And so it's the twin to your statement of when can we file a motion. The twin to that is when can we file an appeal. And
Yes.
yeah, oftentimes my answer is never,
Right.
based on that.
Right. Well, and my experience too, and again, you can, I'm sure, explain this better than I can because I don't know why this is. But an appeal will often take like up to a year, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And they have to assign a panel and so forth. And they often have clerks read briefs, and there's a whole lot that has to go on, and it drags on. In the meantime, what are your conflicted parents doing? So,
Right. Right. Well, and also, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but there are many attorneys who don't do appeals. And so you have to get a different attorney to handle the appeal. Is that correct?
yeah, that's often true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you get appellate counsel, and they're used to the various rules and regulations governing appeals, and so yes, oftentimes that's the case. The same attorney who did the trial work or the trial court work is not going to handle the appeal. And so you're paying for time for the appellate counsel to familiarize himself or herself with the case, oftentimes order transcripts, reviewing those transcripts and so forth. So it's an expensive process. And the alternative is usually so much more desirable. It's certainly more pocketbook friendly.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Because now you have to get that appellate attorney up to speed on what all happened. And so it's not like it's your attorney who handled the case, you know?
no,
And
and
so
it's thousands more out of pocket for an appeal,
I'll bet.
many
I'll bet.
thousand.
Yes.
They're
And
in costs and attorney's fees, costs like ordering transcripts and things of that nature, and then the attorney's fees themselves. So it's you're not going to prosecute an appeal for under many thousands of dollars.
yes. And this is good stuff for people to hear because I think a lot of people don't know this and they're in, knee deep before they realize that, oh, this is going to take this long. It's going to cost this much. And it's way more than they bargained for.
Absolutely, and so as I say, they don't litigate their way to a healthy co-parenting relationship.
Nope. Nope. It does not happen. And I
And
use that saying all the time in working with my parents.
well, and it's no slight to the attorneys. We're trained to be adversarial,
Mhm.
and most of us are pretty good at it.
Yes, yes. But it's your job. I mean, it's your job.
It is, but we have to learn to try to steer the dynamic away from just conflict
Yes.
and focus more on constructive conflict resolution, if you will.
Hmm.
And in a divorce case, that is almost not going to happen without the involvement of a mental health professional,
Right.
because you have the ability to coach up people that we just don't have, and the ability to encourage people to collaborate, where typically we're going to encourage litigation.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, that is so true. It is so true. Well, I'm going to move on to our next one. Um, and, I think we'll just go right down the list on these rules of co parenting, although we did start with what is actually number 4 on my list. And we obviously won't get through these today. Um, we'll have to finish them next week. But the next one is, and this one is tough. This is tough, but this is often in orders, and it is considered a rule or rule of thumb if it's not in your order of co parenting, that co parents are expected to be able to say positive things to the children about the other parent and encourage the children to have positive thoughts about each of their parents. Now, you and I both know how hard of a time some parents have doing that.
There's no question about it. I mean, we would see people that are very hurt, very angry, want to retaliate,
Mhm.
think that there's some sort of moral defect with the other parent, and the less exposure the children have to that parent, the better. That's a tough dynamic to change, but
Well,
that's
it
what
is.
we
No, you were gonna say that's what you.
that's what we have to deal with from time
Yeah,
to time is a parent who uh, they would they would have no contact at all between the children and the other parent if it were up to them. And so
yeah,
to change that attitude from I wish they had no contact with that parent at all, to hey, they have a right to have a relationship with both of you.
yes,
uh, it's a challenging dynamic to change.
for sure, it is. Because as you said, some people are so angry, they are so hurt, and sometimes rightfully so. But the court is not going to see what you do to each other as being equal to what a parent will do to their child or how they'll behave as a parent. In other words, what kind of spouse you are is not in the courts an equivalent to what kind of parent you are. So they might have cheated on you. They might have, done all kinds of things, taken money that you didn't know about out of the marital funds, things like that. That now you are really angry and you think this person should have nothing to do with my children. But as a parent, they are actually still, first of all, they have a right to see their children. The second of all, they are actually a pretty good parent. They just weren't a good spouse. And I know you've seen that.
Yeah, that's particularly true, and it's particularly difficult in cases where there has been infidelity.
Yes. Yes.
Those the aggrieved parent really feels that there's a moral deficiency in the other parent, and the less exposure the children have to that person with a moral deficiency, the better off the children will be. Well,
Right.
we don't litigate fault anymore in marriages
Right.
and divorces. We don't. We say the marriage is irretrievably broken, or there are irreconcilable differences. So, fault in marriage does not equate to a particular high or low standing with regard to the parenting issues.
Right. Right. And getting that type of parent who has been aggrieved, who has been cheated on, getting them to say something positive about that other parent I mean, sometimes a win is just getting them not to say something negative about that other parent. And I tell them that if you can't muster up a positive thing to say about that other parent, at least don't say anything negative. Just keep your mouth shut.
Right, because it can rise to the level of alienation.
Mhm. It does. And whether you succeed, because it's awfully hard to do, it's awfully hard um, to say something nice to a parent or to get a parent not to alienate the child. But you know what? Let me give that thought some more thought because I know where I want to go, but it's going to take longer than the time I've got to say it. So let's take another quick break. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Before we went to break, I was talking about, and I had an important point I wanted to make, but we were talking about alienation and parents not only not being able to say something nice about the other parent, but saying negative things to the other parent. About the other parent to the children, and how this often rises to the level of alienation. And it does. And that's bad enough, But what a lot of people don't think about, parents especially, like they know what they're doing when they're alienating the child. What they don't realize, and the unintended result, is often the child derives their identity from both of their parents. So when you put down that other parent, rather than turning the child against the other parent, you are affecting how the child feels about him or herself. It affects their self-view because they feel like if that's my mom and she's bad, I must be bad. And same with dad. If that's my dad and he's this, I must be that. And so we really have to watch it because we think we're going to turn them against the other parent. And to a small degree, that sometimes is true and sometimes to a larger degree. But again, what we don't realize is it affects the child's self-esteem and their self view, if you will. And they start thinking badly. They internalize that negative thought about their parent and start thinking that they must be like that too. And they'll even often start acting that way. Like if one parent says your other parent is such a liar, the child often even subconsciously thinks, well, if my parent's a liar, I'm probably a liar. And they will start subconsciously lying lying about things that don't matter, that don't make any difference at all. And parents will come in to me and say, why is my child lying about this that doesn't make any difference? Well, if you get into the psyche, often that's what's going on, is they're hearing something negative about their parent. They're internalizing that since they identify with their parent and derive at least half of their identity from that parent, and they internalize that and they start acting on it.
Well, I think the other thing that goes hand in hand with that is if a parent is running down the other parent to the child at a certain age may feel the need to defend that parent against the negative remarks that they're hearing from the parent of the moment. And that's really too bad because it's another version, I think, of making the child the emotional caretaker of a parent. And they
Yes.
have to defend the other parent. And so the alienation kind of backfires. It actually causes the child to feel more sympathetic toward the parent who's been alienated, the target parent, I think we used to call that.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's really a bad dynamic that comes out of that. It's unfortunate. As you say, I think saying nothing is better than if you can't say something positive, say nothing at all.
Correct. That's correct. And that's an excellent insight from you, George, but it's so true. The kids will, or the way I always put it is, they're going to grow up and they're going to see in more adult terms what you did. And they're going to go, how dare you? You know, my dad wasn't that bad, or my mom wasn't everything you said, or you had no business telling me that because it was an adult issue and you
Mhm.
should have shielded me from that. Parents share a lot of things that children are not emotionally mature enough to hear.
No, I think that that's true, and certainly a, a a child doesn't have to be very old to feel badly when one of their parents is um, run down or criticized.
Hmm.
A child wants to think of their parents as Superman and Superwoman, and
Hmm.
they don't do anything wrong. And so the child, they may not even know. They may say, "My stomach hurts" or something like that. But
Hmm. Hmm.
um, it's very sad, and it really needs to be avoided because, as I say, and as you've said, the child's going to grow up, and
Hmm.
the time's going to come when they defend that other parent
Yeah.
against the accusations and allegations that the alienating parent engaged in.
Yes. Yes, they will. And another thing I see, even when they're still young, is they will participate in that talk, that negative talk about the other parent. And so the parent talking negatively thinks, oh, the child feels that way too. See, they're agreeing with me. But the children will tell me that they will lay in bed at night and cry about what they said and how they participated. And they'll feel guilty in participating in that negative talk about the other parent, because kids have an innate ability and need, not just ability, but a need to love both parents. And so when you put your child in that position, you're just destroying them. And it makes them feel guilty later. They might participate in the moment because they're trying to be part of the conversation. But then later when they think about what they said, like I said, they tell me it usually comes at night. I don't know why, but they lay in bed and think about what they said and how bad they feel, and they cry and feel guilty. And we shouldn't do that to our children. That's horrible.
Well, and really, it goes back to your mantra of loving your children more than you hate your ex.
Yes. Amen. Amen. That's the answer to the whole co-parenting dilemma, is love your children more than you hate your ex. It really is that simple. And people don't realize it, but it really is. Just set your anger aside. You can talk to your friends about it, find a therapist to talk to, but don't let it show to your kids, because they need to feel positively about both parents. And like you said, I got a kick out of you saying they see their mom and dad as Superman and Superwoman. They truly do. They truly do. And they need to.
I think that's true. And so if parents want a peaceful existence, a coexistence with their co-parent, then they internalize some of these concepts that are long standing things that are going to pay back dividends, or are going to hurt their parental child relationship as they grow older. So we need to stretch the vision of parents away from the immediate hurt that they feel and anger and resentment to, hey, how are you going to be 10 years from now with your child?
Yes. Yes. Or what are your children going to say when they're adults and you're sitting around the Thanksgiving dinner table or whatever? Are they going to say, thank you for protecting us and shielding us from your conflict? Or are they going to say, how dare you? Why did you share that stuff with me? Why did you make me feel like I couldn't love my other parent?
Mm-hmm.
Parents really need to do some soul searching and think about the way you are behaving right now. What are your adult children going to say 10, 15, 20 years from now?
Well, and again, let me just throw in a plug here. There are certain cases that need to go to court. We
Yeah,
understand. We
yeah,
accept that.
yes, yes. No,
But
I would agree.
that's an unfortunate path, but there are cases that need to go to court.
Yes. No, absolutely. We have that system there for a reason. And you won't get me to argue about that for sure. I can't agree more. So we've got a lot more rules of co-parenting to cover. So quite frankly, I hope next week we can complete them. We might not. But this was good discussion, and we're coming up on the close of another hour here. And I just want to thank you again, George, because your wisdom is so valuable. And thank you for being here with me to do this and share your knowledge with the world.
Well, it's always a pleasure to be with you, Dr. Marlene, and I always learn a lot from our sessions together.
Well, I certainly do. I know that. So I appreciate you. All right. I hope you all can join us again next week. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you've been watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll see you next week.
Tune in to The High Road with host Dr. Marlene and gain insight into how to rise above tough circumstances and learn the skills that will help you take the high road in your life, no matter what challenges might come your way, on the next episode of The High Road.